Welcome to the Rogue Reader podcast. My name is James, and I love reading Star Wars books.
My name's Priscilla. I love reading, but not Star Wars books.
And this is a special Valentine's Day episode of the Rogue Reader podcast. In the spirit of Valentine's Day, I thought we should cover a book about love with my Valentine. Today's book is The Courtship of Princess Leia, the pre-Disney expanded universe novel that covers how Han and Leia got married. It takes place 8 years after Return of the Jedi and involves Princess Leia being courted by a Prince Isildur of the Hapes Consortium. A jealous Han comes up with a plan to prove to Leia he should be the one she marries. And shenanigans lead them to the planet Dathomir, where we get our first introduction to the Night Sisters, setting the stage for many beloved characters in the future. Published in 1994, The Courtship of Princess Leia was written by author Dave Wolverton. He was approached by Company Bantam on if he would like to write a Star Wars novel. He could create whatever story he wanted, and having seen that Han and Leia were married in the previous release book, Heir to the Empire in 1992, he thought it would be great to tell the story of how they were married. He specifically set out to do something romantic and that would bring more women characters into Star Wars, which led to his creation of the Witches of Dathomir. This contribution to Star Wars cannot be understated. Other creators have used Dathomir and the Witches for new characters and stories to this day. Just to name a few, we of course have Tenel Ka from the Young Jedi Knight series that we're also covering, which even though Priscilla isn't in those episodes, I practice with her, so she knows what's going on there, and I know she likes that character a lot. Asajj Ventress from the Clone Wars is revealed to be a Night Sister, and Darth Maul is even revealed to have been born on that planet. There's Night Sister Merrin from the Fallen Order video game, and just recently, the live-action Ahsoka show, we actually got to see the Night Sisters in live action for the very first time. Sadly, the author did pass away in January of 2022. He was only 64 years old, and he had stated in an interview before that he was hoping to see a witch in a Star Wars movie one day. It's sad that he didn't make it to see them even for the live-action appearance of Ahsoka. There are two main covers to this book. The one I have here this is one of the covers you can look at. That's just a variant cover though. There's actually another cover, which I wish I had this one, but let me pull that up. This is actually the other cover variant.
She looks so pretty.
The author said in an interview that apparently Carrie Fisher walked by a bookstore, saw this, and then she ran in and bought it because her cleavage had never looked this good in real life.
Of course she would say that.
But that's it for just all the background that I have on this. If you're ready, Priscilla, we can get into the actual plot.
I'm ready.
All right. We open with General Han Solo on the bridge of a New Republic calamari cruiser, returning to Coruscant from a campaign against Imperial warlord Singe. He is excited to see Leia again after several months. They exit hyperspace and see a fleet of what Han recognizes as Happen battle dragons, which is the name of their ships. He then gets a call from Leia. She had traveled to the Hapes Consortium a few weeks ago and asked to form an alliance with them against the remaining Imperial warlords. Now they are here to presumably form that alliance. And just so you can see what the ships look like. For Star Wars book nerds, I think they're kind of an iconic design. But this is what the Happen battle dragons look like.
Ooh, it looks like a blimp.
It does. And
A metal blimp.
they're actually advantageous because the little saucer shapes, when they shoot their weapons, they rotate. So they don't have to reload. They can just keep rotating them and shooting.
Really? That's interesting.
The Hapes Consortium itself, it's powerful, comprising of 63 worlds, and their ships, like I said, those saucer-shaped battle dragons, they're very powerful, like I mentioned, with those rotating guns. The Happens are very isolationist, and the Empire even had a hard time trying to conquer them. They are also matriarchal, so the women rule and the men don't have as many rights in this society. A couple of other details that stood out to me. When Han speaks to Leia over the mic, he notices that she is wearing I guess like a comb or hairpiece that was made from Alderaan materials that he had given to her as a gift. So that makes him feel good when he sees her wearing that. Han goes to the diplomatic hall on Coruscant where the Hapes ambassadors are due to arrive. He's next to Mon Mothma, the commander of the New Republic, and notices that Leia is by herself to meet the Happen ambassadors. Everyone else is just watching from a distance, and Mon tells him that she was not invited to meet them first, only Leia. The Happens arrive, and several beautiful women are set to start dancing around. They're playing instruments. It's kind of like the Aladdin, like King Ali scene is what I'm getting at. This is what's like coming out as they're introducing themselves.
I can see that.
Mm-hmm. The ambassadors from all the Happen worlds, they start giving Leia a bunch of expensive gifts. So each world is like giving her a gift. So she's getting gems, captured star destroyers, Just a lot of riches, and it's even noted that the poorer worlds that don't have much money, they're just giving her like songs and riddles of wisdom. She even gets something called a gun of command, which is a gun that when you shoot someone with, it doesn't kill them, it just makes them obliged to do whatever you tell them to do.
I'm assuming this is going to come back later in the story.
Maybe. The delegation finishes and Leia looks at the delegates and she notices that she only has 62 gifts. She does not see one from the capital of Hapes itself. She lets them know this, and the ambassador seems pleased that she noticed, and someone veiled comes out. It's a man, bare-chested, who, when lifting his veil, even Han finds to be the most good-looking guy he's ever seen. This man, Prince Isildur, tells Leia he is the final gift, the Queen Mother's son, who Leia will marry, making her the new ruler of Hapes. Han is shocked, asking Mon Mothma that there's no way she would do it, right? And Mon says that she knows how Han feels about her, but hopes Leia does accept. Being in command of the Happen fleet would help them finally get rid of the Imperial remnant. And just so you can see what this good-looking guy...
Oh, they have illustrations of this guy?
Yeah, just a little bit. Well, he was on the cover that I showed you earlier, so this is the guy kind of in the corner of the cover.
Oh!
And...
He ain't looking that good. He ain't that hot.
He doesn't, and this other illustration really doesn't look that good, but that's...
Why? They did him dirty.
The author said that he had no input, but he specifically wanted the guy to look like Fabio, because Fabio was popular at that time.
He looks a little bit like Fabio. Oh, they did him dirty, though.
So you wouldn't accept a proposal if this guy came at you bare-chested?
I wouldn't accept any proposal, even like the hottest woman on Earth.
Oh, the hottest woman. Okay.
Yes.
We cut to Luke Skywalker, who's with R2-D2 on the planet Tula, being guided to an ancient Jedi Knight's tomb. Outside the tomb are several stormtrooper footprints, and Luke wonders briefly if Darth Vader was also here years ago, leading them to find this hidden Jedi. Luke had learned of a Jedi archivist from Coruscant who escaped the Purge with several records of Jedi history, and he's been tracking where that person ended up for months, leading to this tomb, and he hopes to find some records intact. He's desperate to learn more about the Jedi of old, because, I mean, at this point in Luke's journey, he has no knowledge of what the Jedi were like, aside from what Ben and Yoda taught him.
Yeah, I noticed that's always been like a theme with Luke. He's trying to learn as much as he can, because the only one was really Yoda, right?
Yeah.
So it does make sense that he's actively trying to learn everything the Jedi were taught, so that way he can truly be a Jedi, but it's always hard.
Yeah, and he does this for quite a while, but he gets there eventually. Inside the tomb, he can feel where the Jedi was killed and finds his old lightsaber. The next rooms are filled with records, but they've all been destroyed. The Empire was very keen to make sure to erase any records of the Jedi. But R2-D2 does find one stack of records that was not completely destroyed. The Force, or maybe even the ghosts of the dead Jedi, seem to lead Luke to a very particular record. He puts it into R2, who plays a record that's 400 years old. It's badly broken up, but it features a younger Yoda, more spry with no cane. He is giving a report, but it's breaking up. Something about trying to rescue the Chun Thor from Dathomir, but they were repulsed by the witches. Luke has R2 look up any reference to the planet Dathomir, believing he'll find answers there. That night, he has a vision, a dark and violent storm rushing towards him. Luke is swept by the storm, and when looking up, sees a woman in the clouds commanding it. A voice seems to whisper, "The witches of Dathomir." And I even remember when I read this book years ago that I always found this part kind of creepy, just this broken up message from Yoda, just saying that they were repulsed by witches. It's kind of a creepy feel. I also have to mention a moment earlier where Luke has a guide helping him to the tomb, and he's able to use the Force to translate the language of the guide, and not just like general, like he full complete sentences. Just by using the Force, he can understand everything this guy is saying.
So all of a sudden, he's multilingual.
The Force makes him multilingual, and I guess renders C-3PO useless at this point.
Yeah. What do they have him with him?
No, he's with Han and Leia. Only R2 is with Luke right now.
Yeah, he was probably really useless.
Yeah.
Just more of like, Luke, Master Luke, don't do that.
Switching back, Leia is stunned. She wants to take time to consider, but doesn't know how much time she has. Queen Mother Tachum of the Happens is known for making major decisions in a short amount of time. By the way, if I'm mispronouncing any of these names, I try to look up the proper pronunciation, but it's hard, so just deal with it. Isildur surprises Leia, though, telling her that he wants her to get to know him and their worlds first. Leia has another diplomatic mission to go to and asks him for 30 days to decide. He agrees and asks if he can see her before she leaves. Leia invites him to dinner aboard her ship. Isildur puts on the veil back on his face and he leaves, and Leia actually feels a little bit of regret that he puts the veil back on his face. So she's got the hots for him, essentially. Han has retreated to the Millennium Falcon, meanwhile, and Leia goes to look for him. There's some tension in the room when she finds him, and I like how Chewbacca just walks up and gives Leia a big hug before leaving them alone. Han is like, "That was pretty crazy, huh? Have you decided what you're gonna do?" And Leia tells him she's taking some time to think about it, but she can't just brush off the offer because they really need the Happens if they're going to end this war. Han looks exhausted and starts to talk about how when they killed the Emperor, he thought they had won, but there's always some new Imperial Moff or Warlord that rises up and unifies what's left. He talks about how he's been chasing Warlord Singe's Super Star Destroyer for months, never catching up and only finding the remains of his victims. Han is very tired and he's been having nightmares and is just scared they will be fighting forever. He asks her what their world is like, and Leia starts talking about how wonderful it is. And Han is like, "See, you're already in love with this world. It reminds you of Alderaan, that's why." Leia is shocked but realizes it's true. She and the survivors of Alderaan have been trying to find a new homeworld, but it has not been easy. Han tells Leia she can't trust the Happens, that they have kept their borders closed for 3,000 years and they must be hiding something. Leia tells Han they're not hiding anything. If something was going on, they would have seen defectors escape. And Han is like, well, maybe they prevent their own people from escaping. Have a few gifts blinded you to where you can't see straight? Leia tells Han he just feels threatened by Isildur. And Han is like, me? Nah. Leia says, then you won't mind that I invited him to dinner and I was going to invite you. And Han says, all right, fine, I'll see you then. And then Leia just storms off.
It's just interesting to also think, too, that Hans think he's worth sacrificing, like, an entire political situation. So I don't know how I feel about that.
Well, I mean, think about it. They said that they were in love with each other at the end of Return of the Jedi, and they've presumably been together for these 8 years since then. Hi, this is James from the future. While I was editing this, I realized I made a mistake. Han and Leia have been together for 4 years at this point, not 8. It's been 8 years since the first movie, A New Hope, but it's only been 4 years since Return of the Jedi. So my bad on that. But anytime, there may be a couple times that come up in this podcast where I say 8 years, but it's 4 years. So sorry for that. My editor has been sacked. Thank you. And now
he never once said, like, let's get hitched?
It seems that they never got, and it is kind of weird they have not gotten married in these 8 years. Maybe you could imply that they've still been fighting this whole time, and that's why they haven't. But yeah, but they've been together these 8 years.
Did any of them brought up marriage?
It's not said. It's not stated.
Han can't be upset by that if he didn't put that ring on first. I know, you probably think differently.
A couple hours later, Isildur shows up at the hangar being given a tour by the New Republic. He is introduced to Han and is told that Han has saved Leia's life several times. Isildur says that he then owes Han his thanks. Han is like, yeah, it's no big deal. We're lovers, by the way. Isildur is like, I can't fault you for that. She is a lovely woman. I hope my appearance hasn't been unsettling. Han says, that's a little annoying, but I don't wish you dead. Maybe neutered.
I can imagine Harrison Ford saying that.
Yeah. The New Republic official looks pissed, but Isildur just asks Han for a tour of the Falcon. They enter, and Isildur's guards prevent anyone else from coming in. Isildur tells Han how he has experience with smugglers, leaving home to work as a privateer for a few years. He tells Han of the amazing Happen Nova-class ship, which is super fast and capable, and offers Han one if he agrees to leave and go far away. Han tells him no way, and then Isildur asks Han what does he really have to offer Leia. If he really loves her, leave her to him. He would just limit her. He then says he is interested in what Han will have to say tonight at the dinner. We skip to the dinner where Han arrives a little bit late. Sitting with Isildur and Leia, Isildur tells Leia how he and Han have very similar backgrounds. He begins to tell a story of how in his early teens, pirates attacked his ship and killed his brother, which is what made him the future heir. He then left the royal home without telling anyone, joining a pirate crew under a hidden identity in the hopes of one day catching the pirate who murdered his brother. He frequently had to clash with his own mother's fleets, and eventually he caught the pirate and returned. But unfortunately, the pirate was killed in prison before he could name his accomplices. They then talk a little bit about the history of Hapes, how originally the cluster was home to the Laurel Raiders, a pirate group that would steal beautiful women and hide them deep in the cluster. The Jedi eventually wiped out the pirates, but the women were forgotten, and left to their own, they took over the worlds and vowed that no men would rule over them ever again.
Oh, that makes sense.
Isildur then tells Leia that it was his idea for this arranged marriage and not his mother's. When Leia visited Hapes to ask for help, Isildur saw her and instantly was captivated. Han feels sick and has a hard time focusing on the rest of the dinner. When it's time to leave, Isildur gives Leia a kiss, one that lingers a bit long. As Han and Isildur leave, Han tells him that he intends to fight for her, and Isildur tells him that he intends to win. Leia has trouble sleeping that night. She gives a call to Luke and tells him what has been happening.
Wait, sorry. I'm just like really thinking about this. So
yeah.
So she's still going on with considering marrying this person, right?
Yes.
That's just crazy. She didn't think, okay, let's have a conversation about this with Hans. Did any of that come up?
It's the scene earlier where she goes to check on him and he's already kind of starting to get like a little flustered and acting jealous. And
that wasn't a conversation though. That was just like, you okay? Okay, bye.
Well, it was more like she was like, what, are you okay? And then he's just like, he starts talking about how like, oh, you can't trust them and all this other stuff. And then like,
oh, he wasn't fucking honest with his feelings.
Well, he's feeling a lot and he's starting to get like jealous and she can see that and she doesn't like that, so they just end up fighting. They're not like really talking.
Ooh, they're toxic. All right, go on.
Leia calls Luke and Luke can sense that she has some tenderness towards Isildur and that maybe tenderness could lead to love, but she doesn't want to hurt either Han or Isildur's feelings. He tells her to take her time. She doesn't have to decide right away. He also asks her if she has heard of a planet called Dathomir, and she says no. And he says he senses an urgency in the Force, and he plans to meet her in a couple days.
Wait, is Dathomir, is that mentioned in the movies before?
No, so we've only seen Dathomir. This is this is the world of the witches. So this is the introduction, and we've only, they were brought into like the Clone Wars. So most fans probably now, modern fans know it from the Clone Wars animated show, but not in the movies.
It just sounds familiar.
It's like a very famous non-movie planet, so you've probably heard it a lot.
Okay.
The next morning, Han comes over to apologize to Leia for his behavior. Leia tells Han that Isildur is coming with them to their next diplomatic mission, and Han is upset, but Leia tells him it's only for a couple weeks, and then he will be leaving and they will never see him again. So she's telling him that she's not going to marry him. But of course, she's
telling Han?
She's basically telling Han here, I'm not going to marry this guy. We're going on this thing together for a couple of weeks, and then he's going to leave, and we'll never see him again. But of course, Han can't help but still mess things up. He tells Leia how Isildur is just slime. Han's been slime before, he's had friends who are slime, and he can recognize it. Isildur is hiding something, and this just makes Leia pissed, and she just can't handle Han's jealousy. And Han had brought her flowers, and she just hands them right back to him and says, go apologize to Isildur instead of me.
God, this is crazy.
And then Han just starts apologizing again. He says he was up all night. The whole ship is talking as if she and Isildur are already married. And Leia tells Han, just don't listen to anyone else. She does not intend to marry him. Just as she says that, she gets a call from the Alderaanian representative who tells Leia that he has called a special session. She asks why, and he's like, well, for your upcoming marriage to Isildur, of course. We have to talk about the opportunities this means for Alderaan.
Oh, shit. No way.
And Han just leaves with this knowing look on his face. Outside, he starts to consider his options. Like, what does he really have to offer Leia? Isildur's wealth was enough that he could help all of Leia's people. So how could she say no? And I'm thinking, how could she say no? Because she just told you she would. Like, she literally just told you she's not going to marry him. But Han isn't believing it.
I'm just mad.
Yeah. He starts to think for himself that he needs to find a way to match Isildur's wealth. I guess that's his only way to compete. So he calls an old Hut contact of his and asks to put a loan on the Millennium Falcon and set up a card game.
Han sounds like how do you put it? Like, you know how wild animals try really hard to impress a female mate?
Yeah.
Like, he just sounds like an animal.
Well, yeah, he feels super threatened.
Oh my God, men just need to stop doing this whole competing thing and like one-upping each other. Just be a good person.
And I was going to mention this later, but the author did this on purpose because I guess the author talks about in an interview how he noticed when his kids would get upset, they would almost regress. So his idea was that if Han was faced with something like that, he would kind of regress back into the asshole smuggler that he was before. That's kind of why. So he's doing this. He wrote this on purpose, like
he's doing a good job at it.
Yeah. Isildur, meanwhile, he's woken by one of his guards, and they intercepted a message from Coruscant saying, "The Temptress seems too interested. Take action." So it seems there's going to be an assassination attempt, either on Isidore or Leia herself. Isidore is dismayed that there may be a spy in his fleet. He suspects his aunt is the one behind it because her daughter would be next in line if something happens to him. In fact, he suspects she was the one behind the pirate attack that killed his brother, as well as the death of his previous fiancée that he had.
Oh, no.
It's revealed that he wants to marry Leia in order to bring in new blood, someone who is not as cutthroat as Happen women are. He has his guard alert the New Republic and assign half his staff to protect Leia. We cut to Han, who's in a seedy cantina on Coruscant, where he is playing a very high-stakes game of sabacc for over 800 million credits, more money than he has ever seen in his life. Sabacc is kind of like, what is it? Is blackjack the game where you have to hit like a certain number, I think?
I think blackjack would be it.
It's like that. You have to either hit 23 or negative 23 without going over. But that's the rules. The swinger is that in Sabacc, the cards can randomly like change. So it's like very wild. His opponents include a warlord, an alien that can kind of sense, another alien that can sense emotions and plays with his eyes closed, and another one that's essentially just a huge floating brain. So he's facing really tough opponents. It looks like Han isn't going to win, but he has one shot. And this, like, you have one shot to win a game of Sabacc. It's used a lot in Star Wars. It's not even that special. It's called the Idiot's Array. It's this, like, super rare thing you can get where if you get a 2, a 3, and then you get the card called the Idiot, which is a 0, it's literally 0, 2, 3, 23. It's the special rule where you, like, automatically win if you have this. Very special combination.
Oh, no.
I feel like they use it in Star Wars a lot. Like someone's playing this game and then they're like, they have no chance of winning and this is their only way, and then they get it. So it doesn't even seem that special, but that's what happens.
Should get that rule. Like, for 8 million, they should get rid of that rule.
Well, no, that's how the game is played. It's a very rare thing, though. It's just a very rare.
I don't think it's that rare if it's always happening in Star Wars.
It only happens to heroes.
Oh, they're cheating.
But Han wins the pot, but the warlord doesn't want to let him go that easily, and Han wants more than just credits. He wants to win a planet for Leia and the surviving Alderaanians.
What?
That's his plan. He's going to win her a planet that they can relocate to for a new homeworld. That's how he's going to compete with Isildur.
So he's not doing it to help people. He's doing it just so, like, he can just be with a person instead of just saying, I want to be with you?
Yeah, he's trying to prove what he has to offer to Leia. That's his mindset.
Oh my god, that's so disgusting. I'm sorry.
Well, the warlord challenges Han to another round, double or nothing. And for stakes, this warlord, she puts up a deed to a planet. If she wins, she gets the credit and the credits in the full planet. If Han wins, he gets the planet. And this planet just happens to be Dathomir. C-3PO, C-3PO, who I guess Han brought with him to the seedy cantina for some reason, tells Han that the chances of winning are 131,072 to 1.
Of course, C-3PO being a Debbie Downer.
In a moment that would make great editing in a film, we cut to Han ringing the door to Leia's apartment. He quickly gives her a golden wrapped box, which she opens, showing the deed to the planet. Leia is excited, asking Han what it is called and where it is located, and he tells her that it's called Dathomir and is in the Drakmar system.
Are planets like houses? Like you just get a deed or written contract and you just take it?
I guess so. For some of them, yeah.
Is there someone who's like...
Maybe like, I think like uncharted planets are supposed to like kind of be like this.
Yeah, who's auditing every single planet in this universe?
I don't know. Well, it's been going on for like thousands and thousands of years, so...
I guess, yeah.
Leia recalls the name, but she can't place where she heard it recently. But she tells Han it can't be in that system. She looks it up in the computer, and Han's stomach drops. He got scammed. It's not in the Drakmar system, but in the Quelly system, which is in Warlord Singe's territory. Leia tells him he is sweet for thinking of her, but that should teach him not to play cards with warlords. She tousles his hair, kisses him on the cheek, and tells him to go home and get some sleep. So Han is very crestfallen. He had imagined that she would be overjoyed, give him a huge hug, and that's when he would propose to her. That's what he thought was going to happen. But instead, he was treated like a child and basically sent to go home. Thankfully, Chewie saved some of the money they won, so it wasn't a total loss. But overall, Han heads home to sleep feeling very defeated.
So he thought magically they were going to get married or like be engaged. But instead, he did this whole scheme and it doesn't even work?
No. Very risky scheme that didn't work.
8 million's worth in a planet.
800 million.
800 million?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
We cut to Leia the next day, and she's preparing to meet an underworld contact that's dealing with a side plot I haven't mentioned because it's not really that important to the book. But Isildur insists that he's going with her, telling her he would feel better if she didn't go at all, and he couldn't bear to lose her.
Oh, and he's already showing like he's caring about her, like without really knowing her.
Which I think is creepy, yeah, because they only just met. But Leia tolerates this for some reason.
Tolerates or loving it?
Probably a little bit of loving it. She just thinks he's handsome.
Oof.
Her speeder arrives, but when the window opens, an arm comes out with a blaster and begins shooting. One of Isildur's bodyguards quickly jumps in the way, sacrificing herself and taking the hits. 2 assassins jump out of the speeder. Isildur quickly takes action, activating an energy shield that he holds in his hand and covering Leia. A droid down the street who is seemingly painting a street lamp also starts shooting at them, revealing itself to be an assassin droid. Isildur's surviving bodyguard manages to shoot the droid, while Isildur himself uses the shield to hit the assassin in the face. He then throws it, basically Captain America style, at the remaining assassin, cutting him in half.
Oh, man.
The assassin who was hit in his face, basically the face is like burning and the flesh is like falling off his face from like the shield.
God.
But Leia notices that it is a good-looking face, which means that these were probably happen assassins because they're very good-looking people.
Once they're hot, she recognizes their species.
That's what they're all like that. I didn't mention this earlier, but like all the women bodyguards, everyone you see from them, they're all extremely good-looking.
Oh, okay.
That's like a characteristic of them.
Interesting.
Isildur demands to know who sent him, but the guard refuses to say, only asking Isildur to kill him. Instead, though, the assassin grabs his gun and shoots himself. Quickly rushing Leia to safety, more guards are showing up, and Leia thanks Isildur for saving her. He then grabs her and gives her a big, long kiss.
On the lips?
Mm-hmm. Leia thinks to herself she doesn't want to hurt Han, and she starts crying, thinking this would never happen to her.
No, she just to say, you're fucking creepy, get away from me.
Well, yeah, that's why it's kind of sad. Like, this guy is just like, she never thought she'd be in this situation, and then Isildur whispers to her to come away with him to Hapes and see the world. She will rule with him.
No.
And Leia tells him she will go with him. Her love for Han described as becoming a fog, thin and fragile, while Isildur shines through it like the sun.
Oh, she's being manipulated?
What do you think of this? Like, this, like, I don't know. What do you think of
That's not Carrie Fisher. Like, this is not Leia. I have a feeling, is she being, like, hypnotized or, like, in a trance? Or is this really, like, her character?
Normally, I wouldn't spoil it, but this is really happening. She's not being influenced.
No, right.
Han's a jerk, but he doesn't deserve this, I don't think. I don't
They
know,
were
maybe you
both
disagree.
made for each other. How about that?
Yeah. Han is in a cantina with C-3PO. He invited 3PO since he's been around Leia more than Han these days. He asked 3PO how close Isildur and her have been getting. And I like this chapter because it's from C-3PO's point of view, so he just starts analyzing his memories and lets Han know that they've literally been getting closer every day, touching 85% of the time.
He's calculating how much they touch?
Yeah.
That's funny.
He can see the color rushing to Han's cheeks and also that Han is drunk, and so he stands back so the fumes don't corrode his circuits. Han tells 3PO he's a good droid. He doesn't like many droids as much as him. And he asks 3PO what he would do if some droid prince was muscling in on his woman that he loved. 3PO says he would find out what he has to offer that the other does not. And so Han asks him, well, what do I have to offer? So 3PO says, well, let's see. Isildur is wealthy, generous, well-mannered, and attractive by human standards. Let's see what you have that he does not. He starts searching his memory banks, finds nothing, and says, oh, I see your problem.
Oh, wait, so he told him, like, he
straight out
no
said,
qualities?
Yeah. And that's when he's like, oh, I see your problem.
You know what, though? C-3PO is a true one.
He is. And then he says, well, there's still emotional attachment. I'm sure Leia won't leave you just because someone better has come along.
No, what? Never mind. He didn't need to say that either.
I want to see this in live action, animated or something. Like, this is gold writing. Bravo to the author. Han says he loves her more than anything, and 3PO asks if he ever told her that. and Han says it's hard for him. 3PO realizes Han has been listening to another group behind him, and he plays back the memory recording of what these other people are saying. And it literally is stuff like, "Oh, the princess so handsome. What did Leia ever see in Han? I'd like to guard that body. I want to be his masseuse and touch his hot flesh. I'm only like a quarter kidding too." It really reads like that. Like that's what they're saying.
This is like a horrible Wattpad fan fiction.
It's really, you can tell the tone of the book, and I don't know. I love it. It's fun. Han tells 3PO to keep an eye out and tell Leia that he misses her if she asks. 3PO leaves and decides to go to the Coruscant central computer that tends to gossip. He might learn something to help Han. He is on a mission to help him get with Leia. We jump to Leia now in the Council of Alderaan members. Media is everywhere filming it, and one of the dignitaries, his name is Threkin. He's been in the book this whole time, but I just didn't feel he was important enough to bring up. But he addresses the council, saying they should make preparations for Leia's upcoming wedding. She stands up, telling them this is premature. She hasn't made the decision yet. She only agreed to visit Hapes. And then she realizes that she is going partly just because she does want to judge Isildur as a partner. Threkin is very condescending here. He's addressing the council like, "Don't you think Leia and Isildur would make a good couple? Let's have a vote." But they just want her to marry him so they can get a new planet. That's really what's going on.
Like, here's the thing: is Leia really in charge of all this, or is she just a pawn?
She's still in charge of the survivors of Alderaan, even though they don't have a world yet.
That's my issue right now, is that, are they composed of men and women?
Yes.
I was going to say something, but never mind. but
Threkin is a guy.
Huh?
Threkin, the guy who's being very condescending here, he's a guy. But it's men and women.
Yeah, it just ain't right. It's just, something's not right.
No.
And you mentioned these witches, and I have not seen them come out yet.
They haven't come up yet, no.
All right. Go on.
Leia is furious, but before she can say anything, C-3PO walks up and asks to address the council. Threkin is like, "A droid address the council?" Which Leia realizes that a bunch of droids' rights groups are going to have a field day with that quote.
Oh, no.
And sometimes I forget the droids were kind of analogous to different like minorities having their rights taken away. Because, I mean, it is in A New Hope, like when they go to the cantina and the guy's like, "We don't serve their kind here."
Yeah,
like, George Lucas kind of did that little comparison.
Yeah, and Solo.
Yeah, and Solo. They did that a lot.
I remember Solo.
So I wouldn't mind seeing more of that kind of stuff. But C-3PO tells the council that they should be making plans for Leia's wedding to Han Solo. Threkin is like, he's not even royalty. And C-3PO says, "Oh, I've been searching Coruscant's computers all day. Corellia became a republic long ago, and Han has tried to hide it, but by birthright, he is the king of Corellia."
Wait, did he make this up?
You're going to see. We cut to Luke, who's still on Tula, watching the broadcast of these events, and he thinks to himself, "Of course Han is royalty. Why didn't I see it before?" And I think this is supposed to be like some Force revelation, but come on, Luke, you had no reason to ever think Han was royalty. This is just kind of a stupid quote, I think.
Wait, so hold on.
C-3PO is going to explain more if you're still confused.
Okay, go on.
So C-3PO begins to chart the line, starting with Barithron Solo, who introduced democracy to Corellia.
Well, I heard Solo.
Yeah. All the way to Dala Solo, who fought in the Clone Wars and changed their name to Dala Sul to hide his identity. He had a son, Han Sul, who Han changed back to Solo. So it seemed Han had then intentionally tried to hide his identity by tampering with Corellia's records. C-3PO's charted a line from the original king down to Han. Threkin then says, "Wasn't Dala Sul Dala the Black, a notorious murderer?" C-3PO acknowledges he was a pirate, and Threkin says, "What kind of lineage is that? You can't be expected to believe his claims." And C-3PO then delivers one of the most badass verbal punches I've ever seen, and I'm actually just going to read it.
Damn, C-3PO back at it again with those saves.
So C-3PO says, "Well, I am just an ignorant droid and confess that I don't really understand how the actions of one's ancestors enhance or detract from one's respectability. Such concepts are beyond the ability of a model AA-1 verbo brain to process. But since Dala Sul's illegitimate daughter was your mother, I expect that you are infinitely more familiar with the logic of the argument than I am."
So he's connected too?
Yeah, technically that makes Threkin and Han related, but yeah, his grandmother was this criminal too. But it's, oh man, that was That was a really good line from 3PO.
Oh, man. So let's see where this goes.
All the cameras are like focusing on Han, who's there, and he quickly leaves out of embarrassment. And as cool as this is, we don't come back to this until the end of the book. They don't.
Wait.
No one brings this up again until the end of the book.
Oh, about how he's a king?
Yeah, or ask him anything about it until the end of the book.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I know. They just dropped this.
Oh, so they're just like, he's a king, but you're still marrying that other guy.
I guess.
Oh, man.
Leia is showing Isildur a botanical garden on Coruscant, one that contains many trees and plants from Alderaan. They talk a little bit about these rattle flowers that people will plant in the yard of a newlywed couple because it's a sign for them to have children, because when the flowers bloom, they turn to little rattles that they can then use to give to the baby. It's like a little Alderaanian tradition.
Ew.
But she suddenly gets a call from Threkin telling her the diplomatic situation is heightened and General Solo will be going over with a fleet. Mon Mothma has given Leia 8 months off, and Threkin tells her not so subtly that she can leave for Hapes right away. Isildur can see that Leia's conflicted, telling her he understands that she may feel she is leaving her friends behind. And he tells her to take 2 days first, spend some time with your friends. Leia is grateful and almost tells Isildur, I love you, but she stops herself.
Don't do it. Don't listen
But he
to
doesn't
him.
stop himself. He whispers to her, I love you. So he like whispers into her ear.
You don't even do that to me, and I'm like heaving.
Not whispering creepy in your ear, no. Mm-mm. Han sets a time to come see Leia and visits her later that day. He tells her he resigned his commission and plans to go to Dathomir. Leia tells him he can't do that, that's in Singe's territory, and Han tells her right before he resigned, he ordered the New Republic to attack a nearby outpost with drones. Singe will be forced to pull his forces back, allowing Han to get through. Leia is pissed, telling him that's an abuse of power, and Han just says, I know. He says no one's going to get hurt, though, because they're using drones. He's looking around her apartment at all the gifts she received from Hapes. He asks her to come with him. She says she can't just run away, and Han tells her that's exactly what she's doing with Isildur. Give him some time together, and maybe she will learn to fall in love with him again. She thinks back to the love she felt for him when she rescued him from Carbonite, when they celebrated together after the Emperor was killed, but thinks to herself that was a long time ago. She tells Han, I will always think fondly of you.
And fondly.
And Han finishes the sentence, but have a nice life, which is super heartbreaking. He then picks up the gun of command and asks Leia, does this really work? She realizes what he's about to do and tells him not to touch it, but too late, Han grabs the gun and tells Leia to come with him to Dathomir before shooting her with it.
He kidnapped her?
He kidnaps her.
What is going on? The most easiest thing you can say is, I love you so much. I want to marry you. I want a life with you. He does everything else.
I know.
Go on.
Isildur is communicating, meanwhile, with his mother, Chum, updating her of the situation of Leia being kidnapped because cameras show them leaving together and the gun in Han's hands, so it's obvious he did it. Chum tells Isildur to do nothing. She will bring all her assassins to bear on Solo. But Isildur can't do nothing, and he says he must search also. Chum is disappointed he is disobeying her, but tells him if her assassins find Han first, they will kill him. We cut to a random corporal and warlord Singe's fleet. He is planning on sending a report directly to Singe, telling him about how he noticed the New Republic was drawing away his forces and must be planning on sending a fleet through the hole it's creating. He also knows somehow that of the possible targets, Dathomir will be the one. He remembers when as a child seeing an Imperial parade. Darth Vader walked by, but stopped and looked at him. He then patted his head, telling him to trust his sensitivity as he serves the Empire, and the corporal sends the report. I know what's going on, but I think it's funny just the idea of seeing Darth Vader patting this child's head.
Yeah, it's like that book series they have where, was Daddy Vader or something like that?
Oh, yeah.
Or Vader's the little princess.
And for son. They have it for both.
Yeah,
where it's like a father book.
Vader and son.
Yeah. Leia awakes in darkness, locked in the Falcon's smuggling compartment. Pissed off, she starts banging on the grates as hard as she can, and at one point yelling, "Let me out, this is no way to treat a princess." Which I just find a funny dialogue.
Yeah, and she doesn't really feel that way. She's like, I'm going to beat his ass.
Chewbacca opens the grate, eyes widening in surprise when he sees her. C-3PO asks why she's in there, and Leia tells him that Han kidnapped me. Chewie looks towards the cockpit, his hair standing on end and looking ready to rip Han's arms off. In fact, when they go to the cockpit, Chewie asks Leia if she would like him to beat him for her.
So did Han just really think, my friends are not going to do anything? Like, he didn't even let them know what was happening?
No.
Okay, go on.
Han asks her to listen to his offer and shows her that he destroyed the Happen gun of command. He tells her he just wants 7 days on Dathomir with her, less time than she is giving Isildur. After those 7 days, he will take her back to Coruscant. If she decides she loves Han, she marries him and tells Isildur to leave. If she decides she loves Isildur, he will accept the consequences and go to prison. He tells her that 5 months ago she told him she loved him and that they had been in love for a while. Han was willing to die for their love, and he is not going to let her throw away their future together just because some other prince comes along.
Wait, you said 5 months ago he said he loved her?
5 months ago, she told him that she loved him.
So they've been together for 8 years?
And 5 months before this happened, Leia told Han, I love you.
They go slow.
Well, they've been telling each other I love you, but Leia says that she accepts and tells Han, I hope you like prison food. Just a very quick aside, Luke heads to Coruscant and tries to investigate what happened to Leia. He tries to find out what's going on. So Luke is retracing Han Solo's steps on Coruscant, trying to find out where he took Leia. He follows some leads that eventually leads him to the warlord that lost the planet to Han. Luke finds her being interrogated by some guards with a strange foreign accent. She wears this mask that makes her breathe methane, because that's how her species survives, and they're trying to remove the mask from her. Luke ignites his saber, telling them to take their hands off her or he will take their hands off, period. Suddenly, Luke hears a female voice behind him asking, what is going on here? The guards suddenly stop, apologizing to the Queen Mother and saying that they thought torture was the best way to get the information. So these are Happen guards, and they're trying to also find out where Han took Leia. Before Luke is standing the Queen Mother of Hapes, Ta'Chum. This is her and Isildur together. She wears like a veil. She's not supposed to be kind of seen.
Now this is a better iteration of not just him, but her as well.
Yeah. She apologizes to the warlord, asking her how she would like the guards punished, and she tells them to make them breathe methane, which Ta'Chum says will be done. The warlord looks at Luke and asks how she can repay him for his kindness, and Luke, not entirely trusting the Happens, asks her to look into his eyes and think of the name of the planet she gave to Han. Luke hears in his head Dathomir and thanks her. Everyone leaves except the Queen Mother and Luke, and Ta'Chum reveals to Luke she already knows the planet is Dathomir. The warlord had inputted into her Nava computer, basically showing that they've broken into her ship and already looked. She tells Luke she hasn't seen a Jedi since she was little and tells him that he will meet her for dinner. She doesn't give him an option. Cutting back to the Millennium Falcon, it exits hyperspace at Dathomir and quickly comes to the they quickly come to the site of a space station, a super star destroyer, and multiple regular destroyers. So the Empire is everywhere over this planet. Han is hailed, and he tries to bluff some time while he gets ready to jump to hyperspace, but TIE interceptors start coming in, and he puts on a signal jammer, but he had failed to test it, and he ends up blowing the Nava computer, preventing them from being able to escape to hyperspace. A chase ensues, and Han quickly approaches an Imperial frigate, shooting torpedoes at it, and the blast temporarily blinds the fighters chasing him, and they appear to crash into the frigate, but what Han actually does is he sets the Falcon against the frigate. I don't know if you remember in Empire Strikes Back, he did the same thing where he hit on the Star Destroyer. He does the same thing here. But because he shot the frigate first, it starts crashing planet side. Han looks at Leia and sees that her hair is standing up, and she looks more terrified than he has ever seen her. She tells Han that she can sense something dark and loathsome on the planet. She tells him they can't land there. But they don't really have a choice because the whole thing is crashing. And so the frigate, just before it crashes the ground, the Millennium Falcon, takes off to kind of cover their tracks, and ends up crashing through the trees and kind of landing a little bit of a distance away. They quickly get to work uncovering the Falcon's tracks, and then they also put this camouflage net over it so that when any ships flying overhead, it'll just look like there's grass underneath. They then wait to see what happens next, and they can hear several ships passing over. And at one point, the Empire starts bombarding the wreckage of the frigate from orbit. After a while, Han goes out to see if he can spot any stormtroopers searching the ground. And a half hour goes by without hearing anything, so Leia goes out to look for him. She finds him not far, staring out at a beautiful sunset and a mix of reds and golds. Dathomir is this planet, at least in this book, in this old canon, it's a lot of forests and mountains and lakes, so it's a very pretty planet. Compared to what parts we see of it in the Clone Wars, they made it very red and a bunch of ruins and more creepy looking. Han tells Leia their first day on Dathomir was pretty uneventful, and he says, "Do you love me yet? Do you want to marry me?" Leia just yells at Han to get back under cover, and Han says they don't have to worry about stormtroopers. They wouldn't want to be around at night with those creatures around. He points, and Leia sees a huge footprint in the mud. Luke, meanwhile, is having dinner with Tachoom and Isildur aboard this happened ship called the Star Home, which is basically just like a flying castle.
Oh, it's like House Moving Castle?
A little bit more advanced. This is the only sketch I could find of it.
Oh, that's ugly.
Well, it's a basic sketch.
It's like a spider. No.
She is telling Luke how when she was a child, her mother took in about 50 Jedi and gave them a planet to hide on. They made an academy there, but Darth Vader showed up one day and killed them all. She tells Luke that maybe they kept records and he should come to Hapes after this whole ordeal. She would be glad to show him the ruins. Luke is super excited at the prospect, but he tells Tachoom he must leave. But he asks her for one small favor. Can she lift her veil and allow him to see her face? Isildur is taken aback because for a man to ask this of the Queen Mother is forbidden. But Tachoom just laughs and then she lifts the veil. Luke looks into her eyes and his mood shifts and he tells her, "Thank you, I see now why your people venerate you." He then gets up and leaves, and Isildur knows something major just happened, but he doesn't know what. He asks his mother why she made up the story about the Jedi. She tells him she does not want the Jedi to rise again, nor any chance they might try to rule over her descendants. Essentially, she's planning to kill Luke.
Yeah.
And he, of course, saw right through her. Isildur leaves and meets with Luke in the hangar. He asks Luke if he believes that Leia is in danger. He tells Isildur yes, and he senses that she is. Isildur tells him he believes Luke is a good man and wants to go with him to find Leia. He believes Luke can get them there fastest using the Force, and he also tells Luke it's important that they find Han first because if his mother will just kill Han if she finds him. So he doesn't want Han killed, even though he wants to win Leia's affection.
Yeah.
Luke believes it, telling him he could sense that she intends him harm, and despite her cheery presentation, he agrees to go with Isildur. Han and Leia, meanwhile, rush back to the Falcon. Leia is pissed, and we get a fun exchange here where she's yelling at Han for taking her to a planet with huge monsters. Han says maybe they're herbivores, and Leia says you better hope they're not, because that means there's something bigger that eats them.
Oh, shit. Yeah, you're right. She's so smart.
She tells Han he needs to get her away now. Han says she's right. They saw a city on their way in where there's this, and where there's a city, there are ships.
Sorry, I just have the impulse to say this. Han is a fucking idiot. Go on.
He is. So they say they saw the city on their way in, and where there's city, there are ships. And he says they will go steal one and subtly escape the planet. Leia can't believe that Han is willing to abandon the Falcon, and Han knows that by the time the New Republic ever makes its way this deep into Sinja's territory, the Falcon will probably be so corroded as to be useless. So he's willing to make this big sacrifice for her of giving up the ship that he loves. I mean, he really has no choice.
No.
They make preparations to hike out, and Han brings clothes for C-3PO so he doesn't stand out too much. 3PO says just to leave him, but Han says he never leaves a friend behind. So this is one of the rare instances where Han admits he actually really likes 3PO, and not just when he was drunk earlier. Han tells 3PO not to worry, just focus on how he can help with getting Leia to fall in love with him. 3PO then walks to Leia and says, "King Solo is looking quite dashing tonight." To which Leia just says, "Shut up." So they still bring up the king thing, but they don't ever ask him about it, is what I meant earlier.
So do you think that she's unaware?
She's aware. I just don't know why she hasn't asked him, or it happened off screen and he brushed her off. I'm just not sure why they're not bringing it up.
Yeah, that is really weird.
They head out, and they head out at night, which I would just like to point out. I mean, you couldn't at least wait till morning when it would be easier to see the giant monsters, but they head out at night.
Also, too, like, you also don't want to be at risk of getting eaten at night, too. They're in a rush.
I guess, but they're camouflage. I don't know. After about 3 hours, they make camp, and Chewie and 3PO are on watch. Han is woken up later by 3PO calling for help, and he runs out to find an Imperial AT-ST walker at their camp, guns pointed, and the pilots yelling through a speaker for them to surrender. Does
that mean the Empire's there?
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to occupy this planet and take it over?
We don't know yet what's going on.
Got it.
We're going to find out, though. Han dashes for cover, and Chewie, having climbed a tree behind the walker, starts shooting at it. The walker turns to aim at him, which gives Han the opening to run up to the gunner's window and basically point his blaster at them. So I think he's standing on something so that he's eye level with them, because obviously the walker is tall. Mm-hmm. He tells the pilots to surrender, which they do. And they tell Han and Leia that they need to leave. This is an interdicted planet because of how unfriendly the natives are. Leia asks him if the natives happen to be the huge monsters whose tracks they found. And the pilot says, "Lady, that's just their pets."
Oh!
Luke and Isildur arrive at Dathomir and in a Happen battle dragon, and using the Force, Luke was able to cut 10 days off their trip. So they have a pretty good head start on Isildur's mother. Isildur was hopeful they would make it before Han, but they exit hyperspace at the same scene earlier in the book where Han is crashing to the planet with the Falcon. So that's when they arrive.
Okay.
The battle dragon goes to battle stations, and though smaller than the two approaching Star Destroyers, is able to fight them off due to its rotating saucer guns that I talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. Luke and Isildur head to their fighters with the intent of clearing a way through enemy fighters to make it to the surface. During the battle, Isildur notices Luke's shields are not up. He warns him, but Luke says his shields are up. He takes a hit, though, and the X-Wing goes dead. Isildur detonates an explosive behind his ship and also pretends to go dead. Their ships are headed to the planet, and Isildur muses that his mother must have sabotaged Luke's ship to show that his shields were up when they weren't. And he now believes that Luke is dead. Han, Leia, Chewie, and 3PO come to a clearing with a huge hill. On top of the hill sit several boulders, each carved to look like an eye, pointing in different directions. Ooh. Leia catches a glimpse of a huge creature quickly jumping off the top and running into the forest. 3PO believes this must be some sort of lookout station, and Han and Leia realize they must have been spotted. They hear a loud roar and quickly start running away as fast as they can. It's kind of funny. Han tries to tell everyone they need a strategic retreat, and C-3PO, everyone responds, "Fine, you be strategic, I will retreat." Han also proceeds to run past Leia, leaving her in the rear. And she yells some hero at him as he passes by.
What an ass.
They keep running and eventually come into a clearing with several Imperial scout walkers aiming blasters at them. They yell at Han and the group to drop their weapons and march in a specific direction. They start marching, and while two of the walkers are covering them, they realize the other two are nervously sweeping the forest. The Imperials are clearly afraid of something. Suddenly, the group gets ambushed by several huge creatures. Leia recognizes them as Rancors, so the creatures from Episode 6 and the Jabba's pit, and though they seem much bigger than the one that was at Jabba's palace. Not only that, they're wearing makeshift armor, and one of them even has a club that it uses to smash one of the walkers. Mm-hmm. Within 10 seconds, all the walkers are destroyed, and the Rancors surround the group. Leia then notices that each Rancor has a human rider. One of them yells at Leia to keep her slaves in line as she is about to be taken to the sisters for judgment. Isildur is crashing in a desert. He ejects, but when he goes to open his parachute, it doesn't work. He starts flailing his arms, and he actually starts to slow down and float gently to the ground. He's almost convinced that the flapping of his arms is doing this, and he's scared to stop.
What an idiot.
But then he sees Luke also floating down gently, his eyes closed. Isildur tells Luke that he thought he was dead, but Luke says he just used the Force to stop his heartbeat and lower his body temperature so the Imperials wouldn't detect him. They head out and pick up R2-D2, who parachuted to the ground nearby, and after making their way across the desert, they decide to make camp for the coming night. Soon after, they are woken by a stampeding herd of reptile-like creatures. Luke uses the Force to communicate with one and tells Isildur they call themselves the Blue Desert People. This is what they look like.
Those are people?
Well, they're animals, but Luke can kind of talk to them.
Oh, I forgot he's multilingual. He's multilingual with animals now?
Yeah. They agree that they will transport them to the mountains, and riding on their backs, they are eventually dropped off at a stream. Luke says this is where they get off, and Isildur asks Luke if he can make them take them farther. Luke says he doesn't make them do anything. They agreed to take them this far, and that was it. Isildur suddenly gets angry. He tells Luke this is wrong. The universe does not work this way. Luke treats these creatures and his droids as equals, even treating Isildur's mother the same way. He's uncomfortable with the idea that everyone is equal, having grown up in a society where women have more rights, and royalty even more so. Luke tells him he serves the Force, which is present in all things. How can he not respect these creatures the same way he would respect his mother? The next morning, Luke and Isildur are traveling when they find the wreckage of a huge ship. Luke sees a name on the side of the ship called the Chunt-Thor and realizes this is the same ship that Yoda mentioned in the message earlier. Luke moves closer to investigate, but Isildur has no interest and stays behind. Luke can see that the ship has 8 levels and several different biomes. Marks all over mean that someone's been trying to break into it, though unsuccessfully. In one of the rooms, Luke can see that there's a workbench with parts for building a lightsaber. Suddenly, he realizes this must have been a Jedi Academy, a flying Jedi Academy. To Luke, this makes sense on why he never found the remains of one after searching 40 planets. The Jedi must have had their academies on ships so they could go find their students. Obviously, this was written before the prequels, and we saw that they have an academy on Coruscant.
Yeah.
So obviously the author had no mention, but this is, I guess, was his creative idea of going about it.
That's fair.
And you could argue that 400 years ago they did use ships and then they moved later. I don't know. You could make arguments. Luke takes out his lightsaber and begins cutting the hull to get inside, when suddenly he feels a disturbance in the Force. He turns around just in time to dodge an attack from a red-haired woman wearing animal hides and wielding a club. She's still able to deliver a kick to his arm, knocking the lightsaber out of his hand. Luke uses the Force to call it back, and the woman is shocked. She says, "How can a male use magic?" Luke tells her the Force isn't everyone, but few can become its master. She tells him that he must be a male witch from the stars, a Jay who she heard stories about from her mother. Luke reads her mind with the Force, and the explanation for what's going on is really poorly executed, because he suddenly, by reading her mind, realizes what she intends, and then he gets pushed back by the Force from her. And he starts calling out, "Wait, you can't just take men as slaves to mate with you as you want."
Yeah, I think that's... I don't think she would listen to that. She's not a good person.
Well, just to say that sentence randomly after reading, it's just funny. The woman starts chanting, and several boulders start flying towards Luke and rolling across the whole ship. Luke muses that Darth Vader was nowhere near as good at hurling stuff with the Force as this woman seems to be. Luke can't deflect them and is struck, and the woman grabs him, telling him she is Tenenil Dejau, and he is now her slave. Before passing out, Luke remembers Yoda's words in the message, "repulsed by the witches." So this is our first reveal of Tenenil, who you might remember is Tenel Ka's mother. So this is our first introduction to her, and we actually, thankfully to one of the visual books, we have a really good official rendition of this scene.
Ooh, she looks powerful. I love that.
Yep. We switch back to Han, Leia, Chewie, and 3PO, and they are led to the camp of the Singing Mountain Clan. And if you remember, that is who Tenel Ka's family was from. So, by association, you can kind of guess that the witch that Luke ran across is also part of the Singing Mountain Clan. This is Tenenil's mother, and they're all being corralled to the same place eventually. Mm-hmm. Leia is taken to the leader to plead her case. We get a really weird side plot where Han is taken to these other group of men, and he has to try to grab a worm out of a hole that's like takes them an hour to pull out, that they use as hides. It's kind of interesting, but not worth really talking about much.
Yeah.
A witch eventually approaches Han later, telling him that Leia has won their case for freedom, and he must now present their case to their leader on what they expect from the Singing Mountain Clan. As he is led up, another group approaches wearing purple robes. Han can tell immediately they are not friendly, and the leader, named Baritha, looks to be old, shriveled, yellow eyes, and at one point she opens her robes and apparently has shriveled breasts, which the author has to bring up. She sees Han and asks him where his ship is. Han immediately begins to point to where it is, but the other witch guiding him tells him to tell her nothing. These are Night Sisters. And Han realizes Baritha just used a mind trick on him. Han turns away, and Baritha then touches Han's crotch with her staff stick. He whirls he whirls to punch her, but she uses the Force to hold him back. The witch who's guiding Han, her name is Damaya. She threatens to shoot Baritha, but who we discover is her aunt. But the Night Sisters get back in line, and everyone is led to the leader of the Singing Mountain Clan, Ogwyn Dejau, who's Tenel Ka's great-grandmother. I keep saying Tenel Ka. I'm assuming these episodes will be out by the time I record this, but if you're watching our Young Jedi Knights podcast episodes, she's going to be a future student of Luke Skywalker, and you can learn more about her there. So that's why I keep bringing her up. The Night Sisters claim that the Imperials are their slaves, and by right, these off-worlders belong to them. Ogwyn says that Han saved the life of a fellow sister, and that act awards him freedom. When Baritha asks who the sister is, Leia enters the room wearing the reptile skin tunic everyone else is in. Ogwyn says that she is recently adopted by the clan. Baritha is angry and tries to grab Han, but Damaya shoots at her. Baritha uses her hand to deflect the bolt, and the Night Sisters scatter suddenly, each jumping out of a window. Baritha then uses the Force to float in air outside of the window, and telling everyone that there will be blood before letting herself fall out of the window. This is a visual of what Ogwyn, since she's kind of a semi-important character, this is what she looks like.
Oh, she looks pretty powerful too.
Mm-hmm. And with that, we are basically halfway through the book, and because this episode is going to be running a little long, this will be a two-parter. So what do you think so far, Priscilla?
It was a lot to take in with Han's behavior towards Leia and Leia's behavior towards Han's. It's not healthy, and I think people already knew they were an unhealthy couple. But this is too extreme, where it's the they would rather risk their lives than say, I love you and I want to marry you. That's just crazy.
Well, apparently Leia's been saying it. It's Han's the one who hasn't. So.
She pat him on the head. Well, that was for Planet.
That was earlier, yeah. Oh, well. Well, yeah, that's definitely the most entertaining part of the book is their relationship in the beginning. But now that they're actually on Dathomir, I think this is where things get more interesting. So we'll have that for part 2. But
all right. I'm excited.
Tune in next time for the conclusion to the Courtship of Princess Leia. I'm James. You've been watching or listening to the Rogue Reader podcast. May the Force be with you and have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you for watching or listening to this episode of the Rogue Reader podcast. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, subscribe for more content, and share it to any other Star Wars fans you think might also enjoy this content. Thank you very much.